I am going to begin by sharing my screen so we can make a blessing together. And then I will answer a question that came in while we were saying hellos. So hopefully right now you're all seeing my screen and you're now all seeing the words of the blessing for Torah study. And let's make that blessing together in all the places where we are. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign in all time and space, who makes us holy in connecting command, commanding us to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. So as folks were arriving and some of us were greeting each other, the question came, do I recommend any particular books or collections or translations of Psalms? And I'm so glad that you thought to ask, because I had been meaning to answer that question anyway. I have kind of my 5 favorite books sitting right here. You do not need all 5 of them, but I will tell you briefly what they are and why I like the different ones the way that I do. One of them is The Complete Psalms by Pamela Greenberg. This one's a little bit hard to find at the moment, but I lost my copy and I ordered a new one on Amazon, so I know that it is available. These are beautiful translations. They are faithful to the original, but also evoke some of the wordplay of the Hebrew. They're good poetry in addition to being a good translation. This is a really solid volume that I recommend highly. I'm also a big fan of Norman Fisher's book, Opening to You, which is a Zen-inspired translation of the Psalms. Norman Fisher is a Zen Buddhist abbot, and his rendering of the Psalms, and we've encountered a few from him over the weeks that those of us who've been coming week after week, I think both from Pam Greenberg and from Norman Fisher. His translations are Zen influenced, so they don't use, the God language is very subtle. They just speak to you, to Y-O-U, which could be God or could be a person. Robert Alter has a translation called The Book of Psalms. This is a good scholarly translation with terrific footnotes. He's a tremendous scholar. And so if you're looking for a classical translation with a good commentary, this is a really solid one. I do enjoy Reb Zalman's Psalms in a translation for praying. We've encountered a few of those over the last few weeks. He shifts back and forth between masculine and feminine God language. Some people really love his renderings. Some people really don't. And you probably have a sense, just having seen a couple of them, whether they speak to you or not. And the last one that I will show you is Stephen Mitchell. His is called A Book of Psalms. And these are really beautiful contemporary poems that arise out of the classical Hebrew, but they are not word for word translations. Robert Alter's are really a word for word, phrase by phrase translation. Stephen Mitchell's are really more poetry rooted in the Psalms, but I think they are tremendous and they're gorgeous. So that's my basic Psalm library. I hope that those recommendations are helpful. And with that, I will screen share again and we'll dive back in. So in our 4 weeks of learning together, we began in week 1 with Psalms of gratitude and thanksgiving. Last week, we looked at Psalms of awareness, looking at the cosmos, the natural world. Next week, we're going to close with Psalms of wholeness and Shabbat. Today's focus is the tough stuff, the Psalms of grief or anxiety or fear. And I have selected one psalm for us to look at in a few different translations. That psalm is Psalm 13. Would anyone like to read? This is the basic Jewish Publication Society translation, very standard translation, which I grabbed from Sepharia. Anyone want to read this one out loud?
Azariah, You are unmuted.
How long, O Lord, will you ignore me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long will I have cares on my mind, grief in my heart all day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Look at me, answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the luster to my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemy say, I have overcome him. My foes exult when I totter. But I trust in your faithfulness. My heart will exult in your deliverance. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me.
Thank you. I'd love to harvest just a couple of thoughts or reflections based on this translation. Does anything come up for us encountering these words today?
And if folks could either use the raise hand function or put in the chat box that you'd like to say something, because I can't see everyone when there's a screen share. Okay, I see there are a couple of raised hands. Tally Ann.
Okay, well, I think what I find about this this particular psalm, where it's a cry to God for feeling the sense of distance, or it's the same, which I think is so beautiful in many psalms, is that it ends with a feeling also of hope, because there's always hope and trust and faith. And then we go from total despair to having trust, having faith, and then singing, for he's been good to me. So it's that paradox, how we live in life in paradox of feeling that moment, as much as we feel distant, but we also, or at least I can speak for myself, that there are those times I have that trust and faith and hope, and I, and I sing to God. So it's the living in the paradox of feelings.
Beautiful, thank you.
We also have, Deborah would like to comment.
It sounds so desperate to me. It sounds just like such a desperate plea, like restore the luster to my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. If it sounds like if God doesn't do something to help, this poor person's gonna die. It just sounds. But he has trust and faith, and if God gives him any kind of sign, then he's going to sing to the Lord, for the Lord's been good to him. But it's almost an if then. Please help me, or else I'm going to die. But if you help me, I will truly praise you, kind of thing.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, there really is, excuse me, a sense of desperation here. God, how long will you hide your face from me? It's really an outcry, I think. And maybe that's something that we can relate to. Certainly it feels very human to me, very recognizable, that in life there are moments of feeling that God is distant and feeling that everything is hopeless. And it is notable, as I think Talianne observed, that the psalm does end with hope, even that goes into this dark place, and then it ends with hope. So I also have for us a Stephen Mitchell translation. So since they're both short, it's a short psalm, you can see them both on the screen, hopefully at the same time. Would someone like to read Stephen Mitchell's rendering? Or I can do that. I'll read Stephen. Oh, I can read Stephen Mitchell. So he writes, "How long will this pain go on, Lord? This grief I can hardly bear. How long will anguish grip me and agony wring my mind? Light up my eyes with your presence. Let me feel your love in my bones. Keep me from losing myself in ignorance and despair. Teach me to be patient, Lord. Teach me to be endlessly patient. Let me trust that your love enfolds me when my heart feels desolate and dry. I will sing to the Lord at all times, even from the depths of pain. Maybe you can see, looking at these two together, how Stephen Mitchell's rendering is a poem that's rooted in the original. It has all of the ideas of the original, but where the JPS says, restore the luster to my eyes, Stephen Mitchell writes, light up my eyes with your presence. Different ways maybe of conveying the same thing. A couple of reactions to this one.
Doris?
Yes, well, it's not anything specific about the wording, but the fact that no one really wants to read them out loud shows how they hit people.
Mm.
I think that's really indicative of their of their despair.
Yes.
Both the people who are listening,
Mm-hmm.
who are not volunteering to read, and of course the actual psalm, the despair in it. Well, anyhow, that's, I think, part of the proof of the value of these psalms.
Indeed, that's beautiful, thank you. And there may be something different about encountering these words in the middle of a pandemic. It may be different from the way we could have encountered them 6 months ago, right? The world may feel like a very different place.
That was actually the direction I was going in the Mitchell poem, especially with the teach me to be endlessly patient. This really captures the grief of uncertainty. Right. And the lack of knowing the duration. And I think all of us have a deeper experience of that right now in a way that we might not have 3 months ago.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Teach me to be patient, God. Teach me to be endlessly patient, because wow, I need it. How many more times is my kid gonna ask me, Mom, when do I get to see a friend? Right, and I can't answer. I don't know when. None of us know when.
You have a couple more raised hands. Karen?
Hang on. Oh, there we go. I'm interested in the end of the Mitchell one, whereas the JPS translation ends with, you know, I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. The Mitchell one says, I will sing to the Lord, you know, the same translation, but even from the depths of pain. So it ends on a very different note to me. I mean, it really, I think, really changes for me the tone of the hopefulness. I'm wondering if you have any comment on that.
That's a really beautiful observation. I do think it changes the tone. For me, actually, the Mitchell is more relatable. In some way, the original could feel a little bit like putting a Band-Aid on the wound. You get to the end of the psalm and it's, well, okay, I'll sing to God because God's been good to me. Am I really able to feel that if I'm coming from this place of God, restore the luster to my eyes lest I die? I can't gear shift that quickly from that low place into, well, I'm going to sing to God now. But to say I will sing to God even when I'm hurting feels very real to me. It feels like a real emotional move that I can relate to.
Carol?
To me, the first one, as you said, speaks of despair, throwing your hands up, giving up, and giving it over to God, sort of. Whereas the second one, you're in a partnership with God. You want him to teach you. You want him to light up your eyes. You want help from God in a partnership to overcome. And the second one is more in keeping with the way I look at these things.
I like the partnership idea. So I brought one more verse from one other psalm, Psalm 118, which is relatively lengthy and may be familiar to many of us because it's a psalm that is sung during Hallel, during the Psalms of Praise that we sing on holidays, on festivals. But there's this beautiful line, Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. From the depths I called to you, God, and you answered me with expansiveness. The sense of going from the deep place, the tight place, the far away place, right? The place where one feels far from God. And then the hope for an answer that will help me feel expansive and safe and whole and heard. I brought alongside these pieces from Psalms a contemporary poem. And this is from another little book called Flames to Heaven, New Psalms for Healing and Praise by Debbie Perlman. And this is her Psalm 199. Now bear in mind that the classical Psalms end with 150. She keeps going. This is her Psalm 199. Is there anyone who wants to read whose voice we haven't heard?
There are a bunch of people whose hands are raised, I believe, who wanted to comment on the last one, but maybe someone would like to read. Let's try. Kathleen, would you like to read?
Sure. I actually was going to comment on the last one, but I'm happy to read this one.
Great, thank you.
I awake bewildered as the last dream remnants fade and dawn expands to define the day. I seek you. Pull me up through clouds of ennui that threaten my ability to sing to you. Focus my heart to forge ahead. Push away the stilled silence. I am as a snared bird. My wings cannot lift to flutter beyond the trap. Free me from this weakness. Fortify me with your care, for I am needy for strength. Firm my loosened limbs, so my lips can open to honor you.
Thank you. A couple of thoughts, reflections on this poem, including, does it feel like a psalm to you? Does it echo the Psalms in a way that you recognize?
Anne Unger?
I was just going to say about the last one that I had noticed a real feeling of beseeching God more than in the first psalm. There was a lot more like partnership, but beseeching God is the word that came to me. And with this one, in answer to Rabbi Barenblat's question, it does not seem to me like a typical psalm. It's more a statement to God. It's more of a sharing of a feeling that I am really down and I am feeling trapped. And that's a real sign of depression, as I understand it, the feeling of being trapped. And it's not a healthy thing. And even to the extent where the writer, Debbie Perlman, is saying that she's having trouble even opening her lips to honor God. So yeah, there's a real sense of despair, depression here, and not like a psalm would be.
All right, I hear that. I mean, I think it's notable that she named this one depression. I think you're right that that's absolutely what this is. I'm curious how people feel about the request to God, right? Fortify me with your care. Help my lips open to honor you. To me, that is in some way parallel to restore the luster to my eyes. right? You know, there's a beseeching quality to this one too. Maybe that's what I'm noting. Other reactions to Debbie Perlman's piece?
We have a somewhat more general question, if you can take that.
Sure.
How relevant are the Psalms if you don't have a belief in God?
Oh, that's a great question.
Mm.
Here, I'm actually going to stop my screen share so we can see more of each other's faces. Anyway, even though we can't see all of each other on one screen, we can see more of each other. I would say that the Psalms are tremendously relevant, no matter what one's concept of God is or isn't, whatever that G word means to you, God far above or God deep within, or maybe God is a meaningless word. Maybe God is a confusing word or an alienating word to some of us. To me, the power of the Psalms lies in their capacity to express deeply held human emotion, whether that's gratitude or grief or anxiety or despair or hope. To think that human beings have been pouring out our hearts to something beyond ourselves for thousands and thousands of years, to me, that gives them tremendous power. And one of the interesting things about the Norman Fisher book, the Zen Psalms, is that he writes in the introduction that you don't necessarily need to be a theist. You don't have to believe in God to find this project, hopefully to find this project of value. So for me, the Psalms are meaningful regardless of our theology or lack thereof. I read them devotionally. I read them as part of a conversation between the human soul and the Creator. But you don't have to read them that way. That's also part of the beauty of any poetry, that you can find in it what you need to find there. I'm mindful that I want to give us a little time to write together today and see where that takes us. And as always, we'll do 2 short writing exercises. First, 5 minutes to just pour out as much as we can, open the gate to our words and see what comes through. And then 10 minutes to tinker with and revise whatever was written during that 5-minute window. And the prompt that I put in front of us today is, what is the cry of the heart that we need to make? Whether for you that's to God or to the universe or to your own self or to whomever you feel you can speak to. But what is the grief you need to express or the fear you need to express? I want to say also that this can be a tender question. This can be a tender place to dip into. And so I want to reiterate that no one is obligated to read aloud or to share their work this week in particular. Some of us may find that what we have written feels too much like an intimate outcry of the heart to even want to speak it aloud. And each of us will know best what it is that we need on that front. So again, the prompt for 5 minutes is pour out your heart. What is the grief or the anxiety or the fear that you need to express today? What is it that your heart needs to pour out? And my little bell will ring in 5 minutes, and our writing time starts now.